All right, welcome to the Book Brothers podcast, the only podcast where people talk about books. There's no other podcast like it. It's a very novel idea, and I did not use that as a pun. I'm Adrian De La Torre, Books Too Big, on the socials, especially TikTok. I update my TikTok as I go. I like to finish a book, write my thoughts, I have Grammarly clean it up, and then I post my review. I don't know about you, David, but I do enjoy doing that. And of course, with me is David Cardoso, the writer of Project Red Planet, available now on your nearest Amazon.com website.
Yes, not available at Barnes & Noble, available on Amazon.com. So that's cool. Yeah, had a lot of fun writing that one. Thank you for reading it, Adrian, one of my early readers. I had another friend just finish it, actually, so I have another review up. So I have I did have 4 reviews up. Now I think it's 3, because I think one of the reviews got taken down for some reason. But yeah. Anyway, great book, very funny. And yeah, we're going to talk books today. So let's talk books.
I really want you to write Project Hot Planet. It takes place on Venus. You have aliens
lots of fun
from
titles
Venus.
I could come up with because of dick
So
questions
many.
and stuff. So, yeah. There's lots of crazy titles to come up with, yeah.
Yeah. There's
I know you're
really
a big
good
fan. You're a big fan of like doing some side plots in that book, so like that was something that kind of inspired me to keep writing. You know, whether it's in that series, that storyline, or something else. So, but yeah, I know you liked Von Geiger a lot, so like the side characters and stuff.
Von Geiger is great. Von Geiger could have a short spin-off novella, 100, 150 pages. Just him going on adventures with his wife and making, what's it called? Kerfluffle?
Yeah.
What is
Kartoffel
it?
puffer. Kartoffel puffer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks delicious. I still have not had that, by the way, but I should definitely try that.
Feeding the universe one Kartoffel puffer at a time. That's the tag.
German potato pancakes.
Yes, sir. We're talking about books tonight, the books that we've read. Let's start with you, David. You have a book that you want to bring to the table. Yeah. What's it called? What's it about?
Here's this cool book. So actually, I talked about one of this author's books before. So this is written by Carlo Rovelli. It's called "Reality is Not What It Seems: The Journey to Quantum Gravity." Pretty cool.
Interesting.
So it's a very crazy science book. The other science book that I brought before with him is called Helgoland, and I talked about it here on the channel. And that had the cool, you like the cover, Adrian, where it had waves on it. It had like all these little it was almost like water waves dripping by. That was the cool cover of Helgoland. Yeah, I
love that cover.
This one has a different cover. It's just
I like
little
this one
dot.
too.
Yeah, it's little quantum dots, so it's kind of cool. And they're kind of shiny. So pretty cool. And it smells very good too. I love the smell of my books, so don't feel like a big weirdo. I smell my books all the time.
I'm the same way, especially when you crack open a new book. Even old books have a really interesting.
Yeah, even when the page is yellow, they still have an interesting smell to them. Yeah, so this is a cool science book. This is mostly about quantum mechanics, but he actually does a cool thing where he goes through the whole history of where our ideas of atoms came from. So he starts like back in ancient Greece with some of the philosophers and scientists way back in the day. And the main one that he talks about is called Democritus. Have you ever heard of Democritus, Adrian? No. Okay, well, I'll drop some science knowledge on you. So there's a famous philosopher named Democritus, and that's also where the name democracy comes from.
Sorry, I have heard of him, but I don't know much about him. I didn't know he was a philosopher.
Yeah. So democracy comes from him, and I think he was. I'm actually not sure if he was pre-Socratic. He was around the time. It was all in that ancient philosopher time, so I'm not sure if he was before Socrates or after. But yeah, him and a bunch of other philosophers came up with the idea of democracy. But he also had a theory on science, and he believed that everything was atoms. So he, this is well before, obviously, any kind of technology that we have today. But he believed that if you were to look down deep enough, that everything has like a point. There's all these little like points that everything is made of. So that he was one of the first ones to come up with that idea. And he just had that idea because like he thought like the idea of infinity didn't quite make sense because like, you can count grains of sand, like you go to a beach and like there's still individual grains of sand. And so he just took that and kind of like spiraled that forward. And so that was the first initial like atomic theory. But of course, Rovelli talks about Plato and Aristotle, other big philosopher guys, and they did not buy into Democritus's idea. They kind of felt like that our reality is different from heaven. So they were also big philosophers on the whole idea of like heaven and earth kind of thing. Like there's an above and a below. And so that kind of that really like stopped Democritus's idea of like spreading for the most part. Like it wasn't as popular as Aristotle and Plato. Yeah, so that's the beginning of really the atoms and stuff like that. So he's the first one to have that idea. And then we get a little bit to Michael Faraday and James Clerk Maxwell. I don't know if you've heard of these two scientists, Adrian.
They sound vaguely familiar.
Okay, just a little bit. Okay, so Faraday did experiments on electricity, and he kind of was the first one to make like the electric motor. And he kind of realized that, oh wait, there's also fields. So he's one of the first ones to kind of think about like big magnetic fields and stuff. And so he, it was of course proven right and everything that the fields actually exist, that there's invisible lines. And then Maxwell was the math guy. So Maxwell did all the math to prove that. So he did the math behind like electric fields and magnetic fields and stuff like that. And so with those two guys, then we had the idea of fields coming kind of like in the mid to late 1800s. And then we had like mathematics of fields now and everything. So now it wasn't just particles. So now we had some ideas of fields. So like he takes us from, first atoms, there's atoms, and then now there's an idea of fields, and now they're starting to combine a little bit. And then we come to Einstein, and Einstein kind of proves with one of his papers, atoms are real. I guess he actually gave some of the math behind like the actual sizes of atoms, because before that we only had an idea of like they're really tiny, but there was no actual size. But he actually did some math on, there's something called Brownian motion, which is not when you go to the bathroom. That's something else. That's a different Brownian motion.
I wasn't going to say anything, but you said it.
I said, that's a good science joke. So whenever you become a science joke, like, oh, I got to do some Brownian motion. That's what you say. Anyway, this is the actual Brownian motion right here in science we're talking about. So it's named after a scientist. I think his last name was Brown. So there you go. But if you actually have like molecules and atoms in a liquid, they'll jostle around and everything, and they'll bump around randomly. So I have this image here so you can see like this is just a generic image of like atoms bumping around and moving. And then Einstein did that to prove, he did the mathematics behind it, saying like, oh, well, what's actually happening is this atom is being bumped by other atoms. And he then gave like an estimate of the size of the atom. And so then he actually gave a good estimate of the size. And that was the first time that someone had actually gave an estimate of the size of the atoms and stuff like that. And so it turned out to be true. So we have that cool thing that the jostling of atoms is real, and that's from Brownian motion.
Let me ask you.
Of course, we got to. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that why?
Yeah, please ask a question.
Yeah, is that why icy roads are dangerous? Like why ice is slippery? Because the atoms are being jostled around.
Well, that actually is probably something to do. That's probably something else. That has to do more with friction. Because actually it's cold, and so when atoms are actually cold, they actually don't move as much, so they're actually more stable.
But then why is ice slippery?
Right, so that has to do with like the surface tension, and that also the fact that it's actually pretty complicated. Actually, that's a great question, because a lot of scientists actually still don't know why ice is actually slippery, to be honest with you.
And that's why it reminded me of that as you were explaining this concept, because I thought maybe it's along the same lines, but apparently.
I'm pretty sure, like, in the case of water is more dense than ice. So ice actually, the atoms actually slip apart like this, and so there's like more like space between them. So that is one explanation why it's more slipperier than water. Right. That would be partial explanation, but as far as the other explanation, I don't know. So good question.
Gotcha. Well, it's interesting to talk about just based on what you've read in this book. That's the great thing about science is that we don't have all the answers. For everything, but we have very educated guesses.
Oh yeah, sure, it's pretty amazing. But anyway, so we get to Einstein. So he hypothesizes atoms, and then that kind of gives birth to. It's kind of funny because Einstein was then Einstein does his relativity theories as well. But he inadvertently gave birth to quantum mechanics because later on in his career, he didn't really vibe with quantum mechanics. He thought it was weird. He thought it didn't make sense. And we're still struggling with it today.
So Einstein didn't believe in quantum mechanics? Or he wasn't super down with it?
He came to realize that obviously there's something here. He knew that, because a lot of smart people were working on it. So he realized something is here. He mostly talked with Niels Bohr, is the other big scientist.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of him.
And they had a lot. They had a lot of talks, and Bohr kind of convinced Einstein that, there is something here, but it's just, reality doesn't have to fit what humans want, So yeah, Einstein had to like come to grips with it that reality is a lot different than we thought. He has a famous quote where he says, "God does not play dice with the universe," and that comes from
I love
quantum
that.
mechanics. Yeah, that comes from quantum mechanics because he was all mad because he's like, because in quantum mechanics, one of the key insights that Rovelli talks about is everything is uncertain and everything is probability and statistics. And so when you actually measure something, you're only measuring the probability that, that atom will be there. You can't know 100%. So it's only like, oh, let's say it's like 60%, but maybe it's going to jump over here instead,
Right. Doesn't the
And
act of observing something also change how it's going to
yeah, yeah.
behave?
So another insight, which is really cool, is yeah. So like, there's also the particle wave thing. So here we have the particles, but what happens is with the probability, when you're measuring a probability, you're measuring more like the wave, because like the wave has like a line, and so you're measuring like probabilities on that line. But then when you actually observe it, you're measuring the particle, the point, and it like basically collapses. It's called like the wave collapse, and then we only measure the particle, that one little point on this wave. So Rovelli also talks about how like particles are probably just part of the field because it's talking about Faraday lines. Like waves and fields are kind of similar, and so thinking about when we measure something, we're actually collapsing it down to a little particle, and it's coming from this big wave or this big field, and that's why everything is a probability because you can't really know. It's almost like ocean waves in a way because you can think of that every drop is important in an ocean, but we can only measure one at a time. So we're always like measuring like little droplets in like an ocean almost. That's kind of the idea he's getting at, which is really interesting.
Oh,
Which kind of pissed off Einstein. Einstein's kind of like, oh, this is, it's all probability. We're all uncertain, but that's just how, and it turns out that all the math and stuff is actually very accurate and it works with computers really well. Like we wouldn't be having this conversation because our computers are based on, quantum mechanics, like the math behind that, all these principles and stuff. So it's actually pretty interesting. So, yeah.
what did you learn from this book that kind of blew your mind?
Learned a lot of stuff. There's actually a cool. There's also. I just want to share a cool story. This one kind of blew my mind. Speaking of stories, I like sharing these insights. But I shared this last time with Helgoland. But this is the scientist Heisenberg. So here's his face here. You can look
Definitely
at
heard of him.
Mr. Heisenberg, not Breaking Bad, but
Right.
the actual science. Yeah, not Walter White making meth or whatever. But there's a cool story with Heisenberg. One thing that blew my mind here was he had an insight about the uncertainty principle. And now I don't know how much of the story is true, but Rovelli says that he was walking, I think he was German. I think he was walking in a park somewhere. And he saw this man walking in the distance and this guy's walking and he enters under this like light cone and then he can see the guy, but then he's out of the light cone and he's in darkness. He can't see him. And then he pops into another light cone and then he sees him again. And then he goes back in darkness and it goes on like that. And so he sees this guy pop in and out. And what's really crazy and cool is he had that insight to go like, wait a minute. He's like, so this guy, he had a realization with the electron. He's like, well, this guy's kind of like an electron. Like this person's walking. I don't see them. They're still there, but then I see them again. But at every point that I don't see them, I don't know where he's at. He's talking about probability. Like I can only guess that he's like right here, but I can't really know for certain. But then he had an extra insight where he said, well, what if actually, this is a pretty crazy jump, but he literally thought to himself, he's like, well, what if the guy doesn't actually exist? Like when he's in between. And like that was his insight, was like, what if the electron doesn't actually exist? Like our mathematics is telling us that for all the probability and statistics is telling us we can't really know where it is. And so what if we just pretend it's not even there? And, I guess his mathematics, like the theory, that's what he went with. And he told that to like Max Born and Niels Bohr and others, and they kind of ran with it. And, he made these tables of mathematical numbers and everything, and it kind of worked out with what they were observing with quantum mechanics. So oddly enough, the uncertainty principle is almost basically like saying like electrons and atoms, when they are jumping between each other and like when we don't know where they're at, they basically, for all intents and purposes, don't really exist. If you can
That reminds me of the Schrodinger's cat concept, in a way.
It's basically like that. It's basically like that. Like we can't know it's even there, so that's why you get tables of numbers and statistics, because it basically doesn't exist until you see it. And so that's why you get an infinite number of you just get a bunch of digits because is almost the same as saying it's not even there. We can't even see it until it's revealed, and that's basically what it, comes down to. Now, whether that's because we're too big, it's likely because we're just too big of objects. So when we look to zoom in that level, it's just, it's like we don't have the vision to see that far. So to us, that's what it's coming through, but that's how it works. Like, I don't know, the math is working, and like, it's one of the most successful theories. So it's like, it's pretty mind bending. It's like, what is going on here?
I like the analogy of the guy walking from one light cone to another. But the thing about that analogy, is that you know where he's going to be because you already see the direction he's going in, right? So you can take a pretty accurate guess as to where he'll be, right? Mm-hmm. Going from one light cone to shadow to light to shadow. Like, you can predict pretty accurately, but I understand why that made him think of how particles work, right? Because that's
pretty cool
basis for that.
Pretty cool leap.
Wow.
Yeah. So another cool leap here. I'll talk about another few other things. The other big thing that Rovelli talks about is, I'm not sure, Adrian, if you're familiar with the discrepancies between general relativity and quantum mechanics. I don't know if you know that there's a lot of difficulties within those theories.
I've heard there's the discrepancy, but I don't know the specifics. So,
okay. Yeah, so basically, general relativity is Einstein's gravity theory. And basically, it kind of says that everything is like continuous and smooth. Everything's like a field and like a wave. But then quantum mechanics says everything is like an atom. Everything is like tiny, So like, that's one of the big differences is like in quantum mechanics, everything's like a grain or like tiny, like a little bit of dust. But then with Einstein, it's basically everything's like a field or like this wave. So that's a big difference. And then also with general relativity, time is a big factor because space and time kind of warp and bend. And with quantum mechanics, what's really interesting, this is going to blow your mind, but space and time, specifically time, doesn't really work with quantum mechanics. Like, you can literally, like Rovelli talks about this, you can literally do all the physics equations in quantum mechanics, and you can do it without the variable of t. Like, it still works without time.
Interesting, yeah.
You don't need time in the equation. So unlike normal physics problems, when you think about like velocity, like you think of a car moving and like, distance, rate, all that stuff, like you don't need it. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense with quantum mechanics. Isn't that weird? And it's the most successful mathematical theory, and you don't even need time. So he argues in the book that time, so like we know that space is different than we thought, and he argues that time he says it probably doesn't exist the way we think it does. If you can believe that.
I can believe that.
But that the way we experience time, like you and I, Adrian, like we're talking, and so we'll have, this whole talk and that'll end, but in reality, once it gets out there, it'll go on in the internet. It's just there now, but we'll remember that in our past because we're like big, large creatures. But like, it's possible that at the atomic level, that's not how it works really. There's something else that we're missing.
I mean, that makes sense because we really just use time as a way to measure, what things that we're doing, I get that, like, time is not, I mean, it is real, but it's not at the same time, right? If you put an apple on your kitchen counter and you let it sit there, it's eventually going to rot over time. But like, it doesn't, the atoms that made up that apple don't just disappear, right? Because matter can't be created or destroyed. So it really just transforms into something else, right? It just
and that's what he talks about. He says he calls it physics without time is kind of like, it's basically like measuring like interactions. And so like atoms are always interacting. And so like, like you think about like the apple, it gets old, we get old, but we're just interacting. Like our atoms are just interacting with each other. Like as we eat stuff, we get older, that's just how it is. So it's like everything's interacting with everything. So it's like, it's possible that time is just a measure of interactions and stuff, which I thought was pretty fascinating.
I think that's a really better way to put it, right? Because
like at the physics level, that's kind of what it is. Like just things interacting.
It's chemistry, isn't it? Because going back to Heisenberg and Breaking Bad, what does he say in the very first episode of Breaking Bad? He says all chemistry is change. It changes from one state to the next. And then what is story? It's thesis. It's antithesis, And it's these, like there's a certain cycle, there's a certain pattern to it.
It's pretty cool.
I like that idea, just from like as a storyteller, as a writer, that time isn't real. Like we say it's, we use it in a way to measure things and to keep track of things, but on the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. A billion years, a million years, 200 billion years, the universe isn't different. So that's also really cool. I like that. I like that idea.
It's pretty cool. It also helps me a little bit with dealing with getting older a little bit, where I'm like, it's just a number, and it's just like, like time is like what we feel, and time is a thing. We all feel time, we know what that is, but it helps me in some way to know, like, well, it's all just, we can understand it on a practical level, but on another level, it's not really what it is.
Can I tell you how I reconcile with life and death?
Okay, sure.
Basically, I think. I'll ask you this: what were you doing before you were born? What were you doing?
Yeah, I was just
nothing,
chilling.
right? You weren't born yet. You didn't exist.
Yeah,
right.
Non-existent.
But my point is, did you have a concept of that?
No.
Right? So what happens when you die?
Yeah, I mean, nothing, as far as
you're not going to have a concept of it. Like, you're alive, and then you're not alive. And there's a bunch of stuff that happens in between, and then that's it.
Yeah, it's just interaction, right? Yeah, that's what it is.
Exactly. Our bodies change, our chemicals change within us. I'm sure at the atomical, subatomical, and I don't know, maybe the quantum level. I don't know, because isn't a quantum like subatomical, right? It's like smaller than atoms, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you can think of it. Yeah. I mean, I would say quantum mechanics includes atoms, though, because you need the proton, neutron, and the electron, because the electron is like one of the things that's uncertain that they can't measure. So, like, you can say atomic physics, but then when you say quantum mechanics, it's really how atoms and subatomic particles interact. You know what I mean? So it's kind of everything in that field. So
that is fascinating. Yeah. What was another key takeaway that you learned from this book? It sounds like you learned a lot. Just talking about time again. He points out that basically how we view time is more useful and practical, and that's really how we should think about it. Because like you and I, Adrian, or like when you have a job or something, like, can you come in at 12 o'clock? Like that's a useful. Like if we didn't have a number for things, and if we didn't, it wouldn't mean anything. So it gives it some concreteness. You know what I mean? That's an important thing to think about too, where it helps me a little bit, where like I don't freak out about the timing. So I'm late for something. I'm like, okay, I need to be. That's why it's kind of funny how I'm very much someone that likes to be on time, and I don't like to be late for things. But then it helps me to think like, well, time's not even real. I like having my numbers and knowing I have to do this thing in this time's
time
not
frame.
Real, but the way we measure it, there are consequences.
It is also a good excuse to be like, when you tell your boss is like, well, I was late, and it's like, well, time's not real, so it's like it's all relative, That's what I'm You could always say that. It's pretty fun.
I'm sure bosses around the world will appreciate that.
I know, yeah. They don't love science, and you can tell why, They're like, no, time's not real. This guy thinks time's not real. Like,
time's not real. What are you worried about?
Don't worry about it. It's pretty cool. Oh, here's a cool, this actually shows you kind of I'm going to show you this little chart here, and see if you can read that. But we can see the evolution of our view of time and space and particles and fields and everything. I don't know if you could read that there.
I barely, but what did you learn from this?
This just shows like the progression of our ideas of time and space, because it begins with our boy Isaac Newton, and it begins with he had the idea of space and time, but then he had the idea of particles. And then it goes to Faraday and Maxwell, and then they introduce fields and particles. So rather than just particles, they introduce the idea of fields. And then we go to Einstein, and he does space-time. So he combines space and time, and he combines them into one. So it's space-time. And then Rovelli calls space-time to fields, and it becomes covariant fields, which is kind of a weird word. But what he means by covariant basically means that there's a relationship between like space and time. Like when you affect one, you affect the other. There's always an interrelationship between like the fields, basically. And then, we keep going down. And then now we're at the theory of quantum gravity, which he says it's just covariant quantum fields. So it's just everything is either a particle or a field, and they're all intermingled with each other. They're always interacting. which is one of the key hallmarks of quantum mechanics and quantum gravity as well, that everything interacts with everything else.
Right.
Which is really...
Is that because of like electromagnetic fields or something like that?
Well, that's part of it. That's one of the fields. And then we have the gravitational field as well, which is, combined with quantum gravity. And then also I want to give you a cool image of what quantum gravity might look like. There's actually a couple cool images. Let me see if I can find them. Because also there's an important idea of loops that like one of the ways that scientists found out to combine general relativity and quantum mechanics was that the math is showing us that things kind of loop around and on themselves. And that's why we had the idea of string theory, that things are kind of like ribbons or strings that it kind of merges the idea of a particle and something that is circular and fluid and like a field almost, but it was like a string or like a ribbon.
Isn't string theory like it like makes sense, but it doesn't work with the classical way we think of like physics and stuff, right? I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly. They expected to find. So I guess Rovelli talks about it too. String theory is still promising, but I guess they haven't found. They think there should be a lot more particles, and they haven't found them yet. Like at the CERN particle collider. So they actually hypothesized that they should be finding way more particles, and we've only found like a few, but we haven't found as many as we thought initially. So that could show us that string theory might not be correct. It might not be because it doesn't work with the current model that we use to like understand.
And the standard model of physics, yeah. Quantum physics is still the best we have. Gotcha. And here's a cool.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, looks like a sci-fi fantasy land.
Yeah. It's like a giant field of crystals, which is pretty cool. And there was actually another one that was pretty cool. It had a bunch of loops on it, but I don't know if I can find it. Oh yeah, he calls this a spin foam, which is kind of cool. So he says particles, like little points in space-time, might look something like this. There's another cool image
that's
here.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's what we call a spin foam.
It looks like a tesseract cube or something.
Kind of, yeah. If you actually look at, there's like little points here, there's little dots, and then there's little lines, and then they connect to a field. So it's showing that like even particles connect to every field, and that interacts with. It just shows like the interaction of the object and the particle. So it's kind of cool.
Nice.
So.
How was your reading experience like as far as the way it's written? Was it easy to understand? Was it very accessible?
The way it's written. Another thing. So this is the second book that I read by Rovelli, or actually the third. And I really like his writing style. Like he writes very simply for like the layman. Like I consider myself a scientist, but I'm not like a real scientist. I don't do research papers or anything like that. Right. I'm not in a professional laboratory or anything. But with me loving science as much as I do, this is definitely good for like someone like you, Adrian, that you just like to learn a little bit about something and, want to dive deeper into it. That's very accessible, very easy to understand. And yeah, it's really good. So I can see
how people could take concepts from real life science and use them to tell stories like, I can't think of the name of it now.
Oh, Permutation City?
Permutation City. Thank you.
Yes.
Like that's a very science-based story,
Yeah. So all about simulation, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, great. No, that sounds like a really interesting read. Was there anything else that you picked up from that book that's like sort of stuck with you, or that you're going to look into further? You're like, oh, that's interesting.
Oh yeah, there's one more thing. So black holes. I'll briefly touch on. He talks about black holes.
Talk about black holes. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah. The master of black holes. He talked about, so like you've heard the singularity. So when you go into the singularity and then everything, we can't measure beyond there. And the math says that basically the mathematics becomes like infinite. So you get a lot of infinite numbers. And so it's kind of nonsensical. Well, he says that one way that quantum gravity actually fixes that problem, perhaps, is that when you combine quantum mechanics with general relativity, you can make it so that way, because everything is a grain, everything has an atom. Like you can't go, below. Basically, the problem with general relativity and black holes was like everything was continuous and smooth, so you keep getting an infinite loop. You get an infinite hole, and it just keeps going. However, if everything is made of little dots, then you can't possibly do that. Like there has to be a limit at some point. Like there must. It's basically thinking like, how the universe is almost 14 billion years old. Like that sounds infinite, but it's not. There is a limit. At one point, we can measure back to a specific time. Like there is something there. And so he argues that you can actually, however many particles are in a black hole or however much mass it has, it's not infinite, that there is a limit, and that it's promising with quantum gravity that we perhaps, maybe in the distant future, we can measure the limit of a black hole, like the mass or like objects that are in there maybe. So I thought that was really interesting, that I was like, oh, maybe there are limits, because like everything can be divided up, but you can't keep cutting an object. He talks about too, there was an old paradox called Zeno's paradox, where a philosopher wanted to chop everything up. And if you keep chopping everything up, if you go halfway and you chop up that, and then you go halfway again and you chop that up and you keep going halfway, you can just go on forever. But the problem with that is you can't do that. Like there is a limit, like both in our reality, like there's a limit to the number of times you can cut something, like a piece of paper, for instance. But also at the atomic level, there are, if you have like a piece of paper, there's only a certain number of atoms on that paper. Like there's not more, So ultimately that's what he's saying is promising for like black holes, like studying that stuff that we thought was infinite, but it's just a huge number. But eventually we can get to that number. So I thought that's pretty interesting. Like,
Yeah. I still am fascinated by black holes only because like the concept that there's this thing in space, there's lots of these out there in space, one at the center of our own galaxy, and nothing can escape from it, not even light. And it's like,
yes,
in my mind, like I want to know, like what's down there, like what is that infinite, supposedly infinite point, the singularity, like how does it look, how does it work?
It's pretty cool too, because Einstein actually did not predict black holes. That was actually later on. There was actually I think he was a Catholic priest actually, Lemaitre, his name was. He actually figured out that, that must mean there's black holes could exist, these things that, collapse in on themselves. And so that was pretty cool. But that came from Einstein's theory. But yeah, pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great book.
Read it. Pick out science. Really cool. Really fun.
Are you planning to do another? Do you lean more towards nonfiction? It seems like
a bit of. I mean, I like going back and forth. I got caught on this one, so I was finishing up Frankenstein, which would be my next book. But then once I got this one, I got wrapped up in this one, so I finished this one first. But I'm almost done with Frankenstein, so
all right.
I like going back and forth. I'm definitely I'm still a poet as well and a romantic, so I still like my fiction as well. So.
Good stuff, David.
I'm a romantic scientist, so
nice. So I recently finished American Psycho, which have you seen the movie, by the way?
I have. A long time ago. I saw that movie. It was pretty scary, pretty weird.
Yeah. I'll say this. Well, and I won't go into specifics of some of the gory stuff in the movie or the book, but I will say that the movie is tame in comparison to the book. So whatever craziness you remember from the movie, that's nothing compared to what's in the actual book. And I chose American Psycho because a friend of mine told me you should read it. We should read it together, like be like our own little book club and stuff. We can talk about it later. Yeah. And it's a long book. It's like 400 and some pages, And for those of you that don't know, because I feel like the movie's pretty famous at this point, the story is basically about this Wall Street yuppie finance guy in the 80s, and he just lives a life of, I don't even know how to describe it. He just basically does and says whatever he wants with like zero consequences. And he's like a very self-absorbed, he's very, very, what's the word? He's a very vapid gentleman. He's obsessed, hyper obsessed with what everybody dresses, how everybody dresses and how they look. And in the book, especially, he like every chapter is like him describing what somebody's wearing down to like the brand and the type of clothing that it is.
Very superficial.
Very super. That's a better word for very superficial. But essentially the book is about him being a psycho, and obviously we're trying to do a family-friendly show, so all I'll say is that, he likes to hurt people. He likes to, and lack of a better word, unalive people, right? Yeah. Yeah. He does this in the movie. He does this even more so in the book. I mean, it's interesting because the movie is actually very, what do you call it? It's very accurate to how the book is. Story-wise, like a lot of the major plot beats from the book are in the movie, but there is a ton of stuff that they left out.
Okay.
Stuff that I thought was very like character building, that like sort of showed a different side of him, that I thought could have been interesting in the movie, but they didn't really want to touch on it as much. I feel like in the movie they really wanted to just have him be very like, no, this is who he is. Like there's not a lot of wiggle room for his personality.
Yeah.
Especially if you remember like his secretary in the movie, he invites her over to his house for drinks and stuff. And he's like, he comes close to killing her, but then he stops. Spoiler alert, by the way.
Yeah.
And that exact plot beat happens in the book as well. But in the book, there's, they expand more on his psyche and why he doesn't want to kill her. Like he sort of sees like this naive innocence in her, and it also sort of implies that like his secretary is probably the only person that like genuinely like likes him and like cares about him compared to literally everybody else in the story that is just as narcissistic as him.
Yeah.
And only cares about money and clothes and drinks and doing drugs and partying and just all that sort of unabashed rich people 80s stuff, right? So, the book was great. My biggest problem with it was that I feel like after like this 50 to 60% mark, it like started getting very repetitive, because the thing is, there's not really like an overarching plot line or story. In the movie, he kills Paul Allen, right? That's like the famous, like one of the famous deaths in that movie. He kills Paul Allen, and then like Willem Dafoe plays the detective that is like investigating Paul Allen's disappearance and stuff, which you also have in the book. But in the movie, I feel like there's more of an overarching plot line with that, and with him just kind of losing his mind and going psycho. The book has that too, but there's never a resolution to it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like each chapter isn't like, it's not really pushing the story forward necessarily, but it does. He does unravel chapter to chapter, like to the point where he's just a complete psycho, right? Hurting people and hurting animals, hurting kids even. I won't get into the gory details, like I said, but the movie is very tame compared to the book. But that's pretty much it. Like it's a bold way to do a book because it kind of breaks all the rules of storytelling in the sense of like, because he doesn't change really, like we talked about change earlier. What is storytelling? It's about a character changing,
interacting and changing,
right? Like, you normally in the story, like you have a character, you have Walter White who has cancer and he's kind of a downtrodden school teacher. And then at the end you have the drug kingpin. Like that's a huge chemical change. You know what I mean? And American Psycho doesn't have that. Like Patrick Bateman doesn't have like this grand change or this big sort of, character arc. There's one chapter.
What about when like the secretary, if he like lets the secretary go, you wouldn't say that's like a moment of change there? Does he have like a heart for a moment, or he doesn't kill her?
It's a very introspective moment, but it doesn't change him as a person. The only thing that happens is that he doesn't kill her. Like that's it. That's really
he continues to kill after that, right? So like,
oh yeah, before and after. And there's one chapter where he goes to the Hamptons with his fiance, who in the movie was played by Reese Witherspoon. And this isn't in the movie. This is only in the book. They go to the Hamptons, and in this one chapter, like it's like the only time where he acts like a normal person, like they're a normal couple, and he's very romantic, and he's very like lovey-dovey. And he like buys her roses and chocolates, and he buys her flowers, and he buys her a dog. And then by the end of the chapter, she leaves, just decides to leave, and he unalives the dog by drowning it, and then he's just back to his old typical ways again. You know what I mean? Like it's the only chapter where they try to like give him some change, some growth, but they don't
make him
do
a human, and then nope. Just kidding.
No,
this guy's human.
They yank the rug from underneath you.
I know.
And it's also a bold book because there's entire chapters that have nothing to do with anything at all. For example, there's one chapter where he describes in great detail his thoughts on like the latest Whitney Houston album. Like he talks about on a very technical level. He talks about it from a creative standpoint. He talks about like why it's such a great album and how it's better as an album than it is live or something. He goes into it, but it has nothing to do with anything. Like I think it was like
nothing to do with
an 8 or 10 page chapter, and that's literally it.
Okay.
And there's another one later on where he does the same thing with Phil Collins music, which they play Phil Collins. No, not Phil Collins. Sorry, Huey Lewis and the News, which is they play that in the movie, and similar. And then there's another chapter, and this one really took me out. It's him just describing in great detail all the new stereo and surround sound equipment he bought for his apartment, and like he names brands and he names technical details, and that's a shorter chapter, thank God, because I don't think I could have gone through 8 pages of that. That was like a 3 or 4 page, but yeah, like that's all that chapter is, and
I think. Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like it shows almost like the obsessiveness of the character, because you see that even in the. I don't know if there's the scene in the book where he talks about the cards, the famous scene where he talks about the card, all the font and the border is like he's all sweating over it, and he's such an obsessive character, and like to talk about the art like that, I feel like that's just to show how obsessive he is. So
absolutely.
Like. I think it's just to reveal the character, even if it is ridiculous. The fact that he's a killer, but then he loves like this art, or he loves like. This business card,
fashion, appearance, all that.
He's very obsessive, right.
And the funny thing is that the business card scene in the book isn't. I feel like it's made more. It's like more grandiose in the movie, and in the book it's just kind of like one of many moments where he obsesses over something.
Yeah.
There's another really good, funny chapter towards the end still, where it's like him and his buddies. His work buddies on like a 3 to 4 way telephone call, and they're all trying to plan like what bar or what restaurant they're going to go to, but one person's got someone on call waiting, and then the other person's got this and I can't really do it justice, but it's basically just like a tangled mess of what are we going to do, where are we going to go, what's that? It's hilarious. If I didn't know that what book it was a part of, I would have thought, oh, this is like clearly a comedy. And it is a funny book. That's the thing. Like, it's obviously a satire on like, Wall Street, corporate yuppies and finance bros and capitalism in general, Reagan era, Reaganomics and all that good stuff. I want to read you some snippets. So, the other funny thing, and this is sprinkled throughout the book. In the book, he's obsessed with this daytime talk show called The Patty Winter Show. And in almost every chapter, he describes the topic of today's episode of the Patty Winter Show. Excuse me. And even that starts to get crazier and crazier because they start kind of normal and then they just get insane. So let me read you a couple snippets because these get really funny. So, for example, here's one. The Patty Winter Show this morning was in 2 parts. The first was an exclusive interview with Donald Trump. The second was a report on women who've been tortured. Like, come on. That's good.
Pretty good.
That is crazy relevant too somehow. You know what I mean?
I know, yeah. It's also funny that you threw in Donald Trump first and you get the women tortured next, Yeah. Very relevant to today.
I had to highlight that. Here, I have some more for you. The Patty Winter Show today was about people who weigh over 700 pounds. What can we do about them? And I got a few more. These are good. Trust me. Afterwards, I watched a repeat of an old Patty Winters show that I found on what I originally thought was a videotape of the torture and subsequent murder of 2 escort girls from last spring. The topic was tips on how your pet can become a movie star. Let's see, what else do I got? The Patty Winters show this morning was about a boy who fell in love with a box of soap. That's very relatable. The Patty Winters show this morning was about a machine that lets people talk to the dead. Okay. The Patty Winters show this morning, there was an interview with a man who set his daughter on fire while she was giving birth at dinner. We all had shark. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, these get pretty dark. Hold on. See, do you see the progression of darkness?
So I think my question here is like, is this supposed to be an example of like an unreliable narrator? Like, is he actually describing the
Oh,
show, or is this just
absolutely.
wild
Well,
fantasies? This is
you're,
crazy. Like, oh,
yeah,
because I could see like one part of the show being true. Like, oh, maybe there was like a lesbian on the show, but then he just goes off and just makes it like this weird tangent, and it's just nothing to do
yeah.
with the show.
The biggest thing that carries over from the book to the movie, especially, is the fact that he is a bit of an unreliable narrator. Because the thing is, in this world, nobody really remembers. Nobody cares enough about anybody around them to like remember really anything about them as far as how they look, who they are as a person. It's all just, they're so self-absorbed that they couldn't tell you much about anybody except very like surface level details. And even that sometimes is wrong,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
For example, like, there's a guy in the movie and in the book who Patrick Bateman says, I'm always confused for this guy, but I have a better haircut and blah, blah, blah. Well, that guy, when the detective comes around and asks him some questions, he's like, telling the detective, well, he's lying to him. He's saying, well, I couldn't have, been anywhere near Paul Allen because I was at this place and time with so and so. And he's like lying through his teeth. And the detective's like, oh, that's interesting because so and so said that you were there as well. And then in his mind, he's like, obviously he's like, lying. He knows he's lying, but he just got an alibi by the same guy that people confuse him for just by pure coincidence. You know what I mean? And that's the sort of thing that happens constantly throughout the book and the movie. It's very, very, very unreliable narrator. So I'm glad you brought that up. I have a few more Patty Winters, so let me just get through these.
Sure, yeah.
I'm going to skip a couple because these are actually, some of these are bad. Bigfoot was interviewed on the Patty Winters show this morning, and to my shock, I found him surprisingly articulate and charming. The Patty Winters show this morning, Cheerios sat in a very small chair and was interviewed for close to an hour.
Interesting.
But that's pretty much the book. I mean, it's a long book. And
so you say there's no plot to it, though. There's no, because he doesn't change as a character.
Plot. The closest thing we get to a plot is the detective coming around to ask him about Paul Allen, because like he kills Paul Allen semi early on. But even that plot kind of like just disappears like pretty early on too, and it's never brought up. Go ahead.
Oh, I forget. Actually, it's been so long. I don't remember how the movie ends. Does he die in the end? Does he die in the book?
No,
he does not.
No, so it's essentially the same ending.
Big moments and scenes, but
in the movie he's paranoid. See, this is where the movie is really different. They use the subplot of him killing Paul Allen more than in the book, because in the movie he's paranoid that he's going to get caught. Not only after killing Paul Allen, but after killing all these escorts and all these other people. And he like runs around New York, and there's one point where he has a gun and he like shoots at a cop car and it explodes, and he looks at the gun like, what the heck is in this gun? Right. And then by the very end of the movie, he goes and talks to his lawyer, after he'd left him a voicemail where he confesses to everything. And his lawyer's like, oh yeah, that was a great joke. That was really funny. He's like, no, I'm not joking. That really happened. I killed Paul Allen. I killed a bunch of, he's like, and the lawyer's like, okay, you know what? This is not funny anymore. And you couldn't have killed Paul Allen because I had dinner with Paul Allen like a few days ago. And then he goes back to his apartment where he committed all these crimes, and he's like expecting to find like dead bodies that he hid and stuff. But in reality, like there's nothing there. You know, there's no bodies, there's no blood, there's no evidence of anything. So
there's no bodies.
The movie just ends with him just saying something like, I'm just who I am, and I'm an empty shell of a human, and I'm not really human, and blah blah blah, and then it just cuts. The book is very similar. It's a very similar like ending, and I mean, like I said, that's the book in a nutshell. It's just about, he's hyper obsessed. He's super obsessed with himself. He kills people. He hurts people. He kills, animals, like I said. And it's just all just him. It's really just about him unraveling, but you never really know what's really real and what's not. Like the way he speaks about himself is like, he speaks very highly of himself, as far as how rich and charming and handsome he is. But like, because he's an unreliable narrator, you kind of imagine like, I wonder if other people see him completely, and they probably do see him completely different than how he perceives himself.
Yeah. So, so in the movie, then is it left like ambiguous that he may not have done these things and he just imagined it?
Yeah.
Or that's
Yeah,
kind of the
well,
implication.
some of the deaths I think are ambiguous, and some of them I think there's enough evidence to prove that he actually did, do some of those
Okay.
murders. In the book, I feel like in the book it's a little less ambiguous in that sense, because in the book he very much does do a lot of the things that he does, a lot of the heinous acts that he carries out. But at the same time, like, because there's a lot of contradictions sprinkled throughout. Like, as you read it, you're like,
Yeah.
how about that? Like, because he kills so many people in the book. How does he realistically, like, get rid of all these bodies and stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, without ever
I'm
being
wondering,
caught. Like,
yeah.
it doesn't really
I'm
make
wondering if,
sense.
like, yeah, it almost seems to me, it's almost like I kind of feel like maybe he killed like one person. Like, I don't know if you felt this like in the book too. Maybe he killed one like escort or something. And then ever since then, he imagined all these other killings were like him imagining kind of like that show that he talks about where he keeps embellishing all these things that aren't real. And I wonder if it's almost like his sick, demented mind now where he feels like he can get away with stuff, but he actually didn't. Like, I wonder if that's like the implication, maybe. I should probably rewatch that movie too. 'Cause me and my brother probably should watch it.
I recommend it. It's a good
So-
movie. It's a really good movie.
It's been a while. So-
I would only recommend the book if you're prepared to like read some pretty heinous stuff. Because even
Yeah.
I was like reading this and
probably just watch
like,
the movie.
wow, they really went there. The movie is good though, and the book is good too. I like the book. I think my biggest gripe with it is that like it felt a little too repetitive towards the end, and
Yeah.
and I was expecting something to happen plot wise, like with the murder of Paul Allen. Like maybe in the book he gets really close to getting caught. I don't know. And never materialized. So you have to go in with the mindset of like, this is not told in like a traditional manner,
Yeah. I guess just
like
really
you would expect a novel.
It seems like it focuses most on like unreliable narrator a lot and like
Yeah.
ambiguity, narcissism.
It's all from his
It seems
perspective.
like a big satire. Even like the movie, even the movie is like a big satire on like that whole culture, the whole
It's very
business culture.
satirical. Yeah.
And
The movie's
I think
fun.
the fact it made him a killer too really shows that they were really mocking this whole culture. Like, we'll just make him like the most evil, sadistic person, So I think in some sense,
I read
playing that up.
So the author, Brett Easton Ellis, he said in an interview one time, I think that he wrote it because he was hanging out with a bunch of Wall Street guys around that time. And that's what inspired him to write the book as a sort of satire on yuppie finance bro culture in the 80s, in 80s New York. And it's obviously a satire on capitalism and all that stuff too. It is funny. Like, the movie is funny. There's a lot of funny moments. The book has a lot of funny moments too. Like the Patty Winter stuff alone, like, always gave me a good chuckle.
Yeah.
Among other things that he says and that gets said in the book, it's hilarious. I think it's honestly one of the best satires ever written. And it's funny because a lot of people kind of hate on the book. Like, people in the book world sort of think that like this is a red flag book. Like, if you read this book and you like it, it's like kind of a red flag. But it's like, no,
Maybe
like
it's too gruesome, maybe, or too
I think it's kind of like the Fight Club thing, where
kind of gross and over the top.
people miss the point that like Tyler Durden is not a good person, right? Like, and so people think, oh, like, it's similar with Patrick Bateman, but no, Patrick Bateman is a completely awful human being. Like, he's not good at all.
He's even worse than Tyler Durden. Like, Tyler Durden is
way
like,
worse.
Tyler Durden's like pretty terrible, but compared to this guy, he's nothing.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed the book. I want to buy let me ask you this. Do you ever read a book that you're like, oh, I have to go buy it now? Like, I have to have my own copy. Like, do you read books on Kindle or do you library books?
I used to have a Kindle. I kind of thought about getting a Kindle again because I have been reading so much.
This is one of the best purchases I've ever made.
Okay.
And this is one of the rare times,
because I did have it before. But
yeah, this is a rare book where I'm like, I would like to just own a physical copy of it, along with like Project Hail Mary, which I want to buy a physical copy of that.
I mean, Project Red Planet, right?
And Project oh, that's right, yeah. I need to buy it. You know what? I should have bought it. Did you see my friend Jordan bought a copy of your book, by the way?
Oh yeah. That's one of the copies. I think that was one of the early copies that was bought. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to buy a physical.
Has he read
copy
it
of
yet though? Has he actually read the book yet?
He has not, but he
Okay.
only because he has a backlog of books he wants to get through. And he has other friends that have written books that he's also bought physical copies of that he's also trying to get through. So.
I was like, I need a strategy. Like me and you, Adrian, like we need a strategy for our books, like anything that we write. I was like, how do we get this into the hands of like a really famous person? How do we get like Taylor Swift to hold us up at a concert? And it's like, all of a sudden, like, oh, this book just went off the shelves and everyone's buying. Like that's
I would
what
have
we
a
needed.
hard time believing that Taylor Swift read a book of any kind, especially a sci-fi book. I'm being honest.
All she has to do is hold it. All she has to do is hold it. She just has to sell it. She's just just market it. That's it.
It's
That's
free advertising. Yeah. That's a good point.
Awesome.
Actually, we should think about doing that. Getting your book to go viral. Yeah, I'm gonna buy a physical copy of your book, but I want you to sign it though. I want you to sign it. So
I will sign it if you send it to me, or if you want to meet up sometime. I was thinking I should go to Colorado. By the way, I was like,
I still gotta send you this book. I gotta ship this to you. I haven't done it yet, but
it's all blurred. I can't.
It's the Expanse
blurred
book,
out.
the first one. Yeah, I know.
Oh, Expanse. Okay.
Yeah,
Expanse.
I still need to send that
I
to
would
you.
totally read that.
Well, yeah, that's American Psycho, David. So there you go. Did you have any more questions about the story?
What would you give it on your scale or your?
What did I rate it? I think I gave it on
4.
I think I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was
4 out of 5.
Here's the thing. I've read short books that took me forever to get through because they were so boring. I've read long books that I burned through, like the Expanse novels, like Game of Thrones. And this is a long book too. And I was not bored. Like, as long as this book is as repetitive as it wasn't at times, I was never bored. There was always something to like enjoy about the story. Even if it was extremely unhinged and
sadistic,
dark.
twisted,
but yeah,
and miserable, and
yes,
all these negative adjectives. I'm surprised you give it 1 out of 5. How depressing it is, but would you say this book is more depressing or Parable of the Sower? Like, what is a more like
Parable is more
dark
depressing. Parable is more depressing because it's more grounded in reality. Like, I feel like I could see that world.
It's very realistic.
Yeah. Whereas this one is so over the top.
This one is kind of
bizarre,
sadistic.
Yeah, it is sadistic and dark, but it's not depressing because it's so over the top that you couldn't see this really happening unless it does happen, and maybe rich people do get away with stuff you don't even realize. But that's a topic for another day.
Well, we know that's the case nowadays, but
exactly.
We didn't know.
So yeah, American Psycho. Where can people find you, David? And anything else you're working on? Anything else you want to plug?
So I am still working on my YouTube channel. I still got that going. I was able to get some traction on some shorts that I was doing. So I've been doing that. So having a lot of fun with it. Hopefully, I'll get some steady growth at some point. I think it's a really good channel for kids and for people that are like for students mostly that want to learn more about science. So hopefully I can get into schools at some point, but that's Professor Pixel. So anybody interested in that? And,
it's great.
Also, I love it. Painting a lot. There's actually a painting up here in the corner. You can see one of my cool paintings. Actually, I want to sell some of my artwork eventually, like online somehow.
Oh, nice.
If I do that eventually as well.
I like it. And I love your YouTube channel. It's great. I actually have shown it to my kid, and he enjoys it. You're doing a good job. So keep up with that. I love it. Yeah, you can follow me at Books Too Big on TikTok. Follow my other podcast, the Never Seen It Podcast, a movie podcast. Never Seen It Podcast on all the social media platforms. And that's the Book Brothers episode, ladies and gentlemen. There you have it.